Prologue. Janice tried to turn her head, but it wouldn't move. She opened her eyes. Her head pounded, and she drew breath only with difficulty. She looked around as much as she could without turning her head. What she saw was enough to make her scream, but when she tried, she found she couldn't do that either. She remained still, her body frozen in a rictus of terror. She sat at a dining table in a dim room, lit only by candles. In front of her and the other 4 people seated at the table were plates piled high with roast beef, mashed potatoes and steamed vegetables. A glass of deep red wine sat just ahead and to the right of each plate, and a centerpiece of lilacs and poppies sat in a vase in the middle of the table. 3 of the other 4 people seated around the table seemed afflicted by the same problem as Janice. They, a man who appeared to be in his late 30s like she was, and another man and woman who looked to be in their late 50s or early 60s, sat ramrod straight, their faces twisted in grotesque expressions of fright. She noticed with a sickening twist of her stomach that they, like her, seemed capable only of blinking and moving their eyes, which they did, flicking them rapidly back and forth. The 5th person had no trouble moving at all. He held a wine glass up and gestured freely with his other hand as he spoke. "So I said, Frank, if you're going to be like that, then we might as well talk about Mexico City." He laughed and said, "God, you should have seen his face when I said that. You would have thought I had the pictures right there on my phone." He took a sip of his wine, then said, "Well, I do have the pictures on my phone, but I'm not really going to ruin a man's career just because he's a pompous ass. That would be too much." This man was younger, but not by much. Maybe 30, give or take a year or 2. Absurdly, Janice thought he looked sort of cute. He had a charmingly boyish smile and lively blue eyes. Janice had a weakness for blue eyes. Her skin crawled with revulsion as she realised he was exactly the kind of man she would have flirted with if she'd met him at a bar or a club somewhere. Then she remembered him. She had flirted with him. He had been standing outside the bar she stopped by after work, and she had struck up a conversation with him. Her memory of that conversation was fuzzy, but she recalled wondering if maybe the blue-eyed soul might feel like spending the night with her. Another wave of revulsion hit her, but she showed no reaction other than to stare in horror. Whatever he'd given her had paralysed her, so all she could do was move her eyes. She struggled to take a breath, but her lungs seemed sluggish and growing more so by the moment. "Hey, Dad," the crazed stranger said. "What do you think about the Phillies this year? We have Turner now, so I think we have a shot at winning the whole thing." "Yeah, okay, not a great shot, but a shot." He chuckled. "I'm holding out hope." He smiled at the older man sitting at the table. After a moment, his smile turned into a frown. "Dad?" Janice turned to the older man to find his eyes drooped and his lids half closed. The other 2 paralysed victims stared at him in horror, and a moment later Janice realised why. She tried to scream, but of course she couldn't. She drew in a breath, and the difficulty that act presented chilled her, but not as much as the stranger's next words. He sighed in minor exasperation and shook his head. "Looks like Dad's dead. Oh well, I guess I'll have to find a new one." He stood and walked behind the older man. With a grunt of effort, he dragged the corpse away. Janice tried to see where he took him, but without being able to turn her head, she couldn't. A few minutes later, the young stranger returned, slightly out of breath from moving the body. "All right," he said. "Who's up for a board game?"